make Gabe sweat. In the top right side, we're looking at the main base of the German machine himself, Mr. Consistency, the Rekordmeister of the ESL Weekly. It is HeRoMaRinE.
And his opponent in the southwest position of Pillars of Gold, we have the red Protoss player representing Clash. He is Hellraiser.
Of all 3 seasons, this is already the best performance that Hellraiser has had in any of these DreamHacks. The very first time he broke into the top 12 of the European scene. That is definitely something to be proud of. It's difficult to qualify for this event, and it's very difficult to make top 4 in those groups, and then even winning a round in the playoffs is awesome. Gabe, of course, we know, holds himself to higher standards. He's probably aiming for at least a top 4 finish this season.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Gabe's been a player that we talk up all the time. We know that he's, as you said, Mr. Consistent. He's had a dominant performance throughout this year in those weekly cups, especially running away with them early on. And I think it's interesting because he does end up having a bit of a harder time taking down the big titans of the scene, right? As Hellraiser is going to be building his second pylon off to the side a little bit here, Kev. Not the most standard place to drop this, right?
Not at all. I mean, he took double gas as well. This is a very weird opening. Hellraiser does often have a lot of very funky and weird builds. Is this just going to be a very quick start?
What? He wants him to think he's proxying him, I guess, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's one big mind game, but... I mean, this kind of stuff can either work out in a big way, where HeRoMaRinE could panic a little bit, he could overreact, build bonkers, start scouting everywhere near his main base, which he's already doing with one Marine. Instead, the SCV is just like, oh, cool, you took your third at the bottom side of the map. Well, that's nice. I'm just going to do a normal build. This is not that comfortable because it's hard to defend both mineral lines. I can only imagine that Hellraiser plays Phoenixes now, right?
I can see it. Yeah, it's going to make a lot of sense, right? Because of the way that we know that most of the Terran builds open up too. The Phoenix play has been really, really popular this season throughout a lot of the matchups that we've seen in this DreamHack, actually. And I was going to actually ask you, Kev, because it seems like we've had a lot of Protoss doing some types of similar things, and we've had a lot more success, I guess we could say. They're pretty much all in the lower bracket. They are all in the lower bracket now, but we've had a lot of Protoss players actually in the final bracket for EU, which we do not get to say often enough. So is this a component of it? Have Protoss players been figuring out a little bit more how they can deal with these types of attacks? It is going to be Oracle first, which will be very important to keep in mind if that detection gets taken out while a mine drop or something goes across the map.
Wow, he even recalled 8 probes. What a bizarre way to play if you're Hellraiser. I guess it makes sense.
Sees that.
Yeah, of course, but the SCV already knew that the next was there anyway. Like, it makes a little bit of sense, if you ask me, to go for the recall, because normally you want to rally your probes, right, from the main to the natural. But now if you do that, it takes an additional 4 or 5 seconds for every single probe to start mining. So maybe this way, Hellraiser's like, well, I spend 1 recall, I don't really need recall for anything else in the early stage of this game, and now I can at least just rally my main base probes into my main base mineral line, and they will start working immediately. But kind of a weird way to play. Wow, he's playing so greedy. Oh my goodness, what?
Yeah, well, I okay, I'm completely with you on that. I cannot fathom what it was that made him think, all right, first game is going to be on Pillars of Gold. I'm going to take a quick fake proxy Nexus, and then I'm going to go for a third base before the 4-minute mark. And I mean, we typically see Protoss players when they do these types of openings, like you can get that third normally at like 4.5 minutes, but he really went out of his way to squeeze that out super early. And is this build actually invincible against, like, if he just moves out with a Cyclone Viking and all of his Marines? Because I feel like there's got to be some potential for HeRoMaRinE to try to punish this, right?
Absolutely. I think if Gabe makes a proper push, let's say 2 Vikings, 2 Cyclones, and then a bunch of Marines, I don't care if you have Stim or not, I feel like you have so much firepower in your army. And because Hellraiser goes up to 3 bases so quick, it seems impossible for him to have charge ready for the very first attack. And if you don't have charge, I feel like these Stargate units and simple gateway units, I don't think they're really going to cut it. He's even getting a Forge as well, which I also find spectacular, because he's going to have like no units at all. I have no idea how he thinks he's going to defend, but Maybe Gabe just doesn't move out and then he gets away with everything. He does get charged, maybe +1 armor, then it's good.
And that actually might be the 200 IQ though play, right, Kev? Because I mean, HeRoMaRinE is not really known for being the most aggressive player in Europe. Like as a Terran, sure, he'll bring a cheeky attack, but it's, you know, the earliest it'll be is off 2 bases, usually with that stim upgrade. So it seems like Hellraiser in his preparation for this, and we've seen other players mention this even in their interviews, is that you can study HeRoMaRiNE's play pretty easily. He streams an insane amount. There's tons of data to see, of course, playing all those weekly cups. Now that Viking does end up landing in the mineral line, gets 1 probe kill before being lifted back into the air. Sadly, he cannot turn his engines on and fly away. He's kind of stuck. He's gonna get at least 2 more probes on the way out. Yeah, it's just such a weird opening, and I think that might be what it is. Now I'm just starting to think like Hellraiser just assumed that it would be a very defensive opening by Gabe, but he needs to make sure that all this economy he invested in pays off before that attack comes, because it's still going to be very hard to stop.
Now, the attack is going to be powerful regardless, but it seems that Hellraiser made all the correct choices up to this point. Like, I was very worried that Gabe would have just gone immediately with, let's say, 6 or 7 Marines, 2 Cyclones, 2 Vikings. Then I think he would have a very hard time dealing with that because his army really wouldn't be that powerful. Right now, he is going to get away with everything that he has done. HeRoMaRinE sends out a 8 Marine drop, which obviously is very risky against the Phoenix opening, but I think he'll get away with it as well. And I think the idea, Nate, is to strike the main base with the drop while letting this army just casually move to the other side of the map. It is going to be a difficult hold. Hellraiser needs to A, not lose any units, and B, he needs to start warping in literally all the Zealots right now.
Yeah, he's going to need a tremendous amount to deal with this. There's already a good number of Zealots sitting at the naturals, up to 9, but there's 22 Marines and 6 Marauders, and that is nothing to laugh at, especially with the Widow Mines. If HeRoMaRinE even just gets to set those up between the natural and the third while that drop in the main that you were talking about is hitting, and look at this, he targets the pylon,
oh my
depowers 5 gateways with 1 depth strike, and now the Phoenix have to come over and fight, so the army is not going to be looking at that third base, Roddy.
Yep, and I actually think it's a big mistake to warp in the Zealots there as well. I feel like he should have warped in the Zealots here on the right side. Now he's engaging with only like 25% of his army. This game is all over. There is no way that this army is going to get cleaned up. Zealots and Phoenixes are very good, but 10 probes have already gone down. Maybe if he does a good job lifting the Marines, but the target fire of HeRoMaRinE is pretty good. More units are streaming in as well. I mean, Hellraiser maybe barely hangs on, but not even really. He's lost so many workers already. Yeah, that was a disaster. GG gets called. HeRoMaRinE just casually takes the first game. I like the way that Gabe set it up, right? Because it's the 8 Marine drop that pulls the Phoenixes out of position. If the Phoenixes and all the Zealots are just standing there waiting to receive that push, maybe when HeRoMaRinE moves forward, the tank is not sieged, the Widow Mines are not burrowed yet, and then you just A-move and lift all the things you should lift. Hellraiser could hold there, and then he's actually in a pretty good position. But very well done by Gabe.
Yeah, I think the biggest things to note were just that, I mean, we talked about it very early on in that map, but yeah, it's just a pretty wild level of greed as well. Like you're asking for that big attack, and you have to, if you want to do those builds, you got to be ready to receive that type of play. And like you said, being able to pull all the Phoenix away, forcing that big warp in of Zealots, but then depowering the gateways, that's, you know, you're just limiting the next wave of production so much that it was quite easy for him to get all those Widow Mines in position with the siege tank at the third. And yeah, well, if you can get your Marines behind the Marauders, 9 Zealots will not kill 22 of them.
And I gotta say that obviously this was always gonna be bad if Gabe was gonna have a good setup there and the drop was always gonna deal some damage in the main. But I think the worst thing that Hellraiser could have done is after he wipes in the Zealots in the main and all the Phoenixes are there, to then engage with his remaining tiny Zealot sentry army. It's like, no, just wait. Like, yeah, you're losing 10 probes, that hurts. Your Nexus is taking damage, very uncomfortable. But fighting with like 30-40% of your army while the other units are coming in, then you lose the first part, and that's when the reinforcements show up. And that was probably just the worst way that Hellraiser could have tried to deal with that attack.
Yeah, we'll just have to see if he can make a good adjustment, get things going again. Of course, going to move into a bit of a different map. We're going to go to Gigantha for map number 2, and we'll see if Hellraiser is going to be able to pull this one out. Now, he did go for such a weird opening in that last game. Maybe finessing it as much as he tried was also a bit of the problem too, because you're trying to get away with so much fancy footwork. I feel the opportunities to slip up are a little bit increased in those situations, but We'll have to see. We're loaded in. In the northeast position, we have the red Protoss player trailing 0-1 at the moment from Clash. He's HeRoMaRinE.
I gotta say that previous game really did remind me of a lot of the games he plays every Monday night. Builds up an army, runs to the other side of the map, and he wins. Hailing from Germany, it is HeRoMaRinE. Last thing I want to say about that previous game, Nate, even though like the build order and the expanse and everything was a bit odd, but you know, I didn't hate majority of the things that HeRoMaRinE did in the end, other than the way that he defended, obviously, the game-ending push. But I don't like the Oracle. I feel like if you want to play Phoenix Zealot, then just play Phoenix Zealot. What did that Oracle really add? Like, he dropped a couple revelations, still didn't see that Viking leave the first time, got a bit lucky with a Phoenix popping, but that could have been worse. Then he didn't see that medevac leave either, and then the Oracle just kind of flew into the army in the center of the map and died before the attack even started. I don't see the point of the Oracle if you want to play Phoenix Zealot.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. He didn't really accomplish anything with it. And even if you could get a worker or two, you know, when you're dealing with a push like that, I was kind of asking myself, like, where's the stasis trap, right? Where's the setup to try and catch this army on one of those very obvious ramps, especially on Pillars of Gold? There's a couple of very obvious attack paths, right? You always want to come up from the top side outside that third, or that top side outside the ramp to the natural, but you're rarely kind of like threading the needle around that. So I do agree with you. He didn't really give himself the opportunity to put pressure or delay the attack. And hey, I mean, if that 8 Marine drop comes in while the army is stasis, yeah, he cleans that up. Rest of the army goes to the front, and suddenly you're looking at a completely different ball game. But those are the types of things that hopefully HeRoMaRinE keeps in mind, and he thinks to himself, okay, well, my Oracle didn't do as much, so if I get one, I'm going to play a little bit harder with it, or I'm going to skip it this time.
Now HeRoMaRinE is being a little cheeky here, trying to get that bunker up in the natural. The Adept wants to deal with it. On the other hand, you can't really ignore the Reaper. So Gabe is going to have a very easy time getting this bunker up. And this is always a bit frustrating. I think HeRoMaRinE should immediately build a shield battery on the low ground. You can delay it, but eventually you kind of want to get a battery anyway, because you don't want to wait like four minutes until you can actually clean up that bunker. So funny to see that Gabe is opening up Barracks Factory into expand, right? So he's going for a very quick factory, quick attack, later expand.
And, you know, I absolutely love this type of play out of Terrans, Roddy, because, you know, it makes me think about what people struggle against. And sometimes it is that early pressure, but you actually see a lot of openings like this from Terran players in TVT, where you go for those 2 fast gases, you start your factory, and then you pull off of the gas mining so that you can still get your command center up, but you also have the tech to either put on pressure or delay or do something like that. And he's going to try to run the Hellion into the main base while the Reapers are in the natural. Don't think he's going to be able to get any kills. Maybe burn some of the energy off the shield battery. Maybe scout the Void Ray. Not going to see that. But the Void Ray will reveal itself as Reapers. They cannot shoot up. So this bunker is going to die.
Very fascinating that HeRoMaRinE decides to build a Void Ray here. It is obviously a very easy way to take care of that bunker, and it does speed up the entire process, but it's still a pretty expensive unit. And more often than not, I feel like the Void Ray has a very hard time accomplishing anything in this matchup.
Yeah. Well, unless you're proxying and building 7 shield batteries outside their base, the Void Ray is not that strong versus Terran. No, I agree.
We saw, I don't know if it was Showtime or Hearthstone or any of these prototypes that had 2 Void Rays on patrol at the Romantic side. Didn't do that much either, but it is at least kind of nice to be able to gun down those medevacs. I hope that HeRoMaRinE gets a proper scout off here with his Void Ray, but... Oh, he's actually going to go Master. Okay. This is the only thing that makes sense. I've seen HeRoMaRinE do this in the past. I casted a game once on Eternal Empire where he did this build against Kalazur, and I legit had no idea what I was watching. I was like, oh my god, this is awesome and terrifying at the same time. But I think he's going to go Flux Veins Void Rays.
Whoa, okay. Well, if that ends up being the case, I'm going to be... Well, we're kicking this day into overdrive because there's going to be plenty of Protoss games to be seen. But at the moment, he's just cranking out the double Oracle production. But that Void Ray, a little bit slow. And now we've got the Armored Widow Mines. And I think that this can end up being really difficult to deal with on the part of HeRoMaRinE. Yes, the Oracle Revelation was made cheaper and a bit easier to use, but it's still not an observer. You're still going to have the Oracles nearby instead of being able to do any harassing or fighting. And I think if you're HeRoMaRinE and you realize what's going on here, it's just mines. Just make it rain, baby. Make it rain.
Well, where's the Void Ray when you need it the most, Nathanias? It's not here. It's not helping out cleaning up these mines. That really could have gotten a lot worse. There's another mine in the main base that gets a decent shot. I think HeRoMaRinE is already very happy with his opening. And if you play like this, the way that Hellraiser does, like these builds are not the meta for a reason. Probably not the very best, but hey, it's very different. The timings are off, but it's so important that you have a very clean game, that you just shut down any sort of potential harass that Gabe throws at you, that your economy goes completely undisrupted. I think this is already kind of a disaster for Hellraiser. And now the double target has been spotted. HeRoMaRinE knows that he's going up against what seems to be Mass Oracle at this point. I hate to say it, Nate, but I really think this game is not going anywhere for Hellraiser.
Yeah, I can't see a world where Mass Oracle kills any Terran army. If there's one thing Terran has that's pretty good in almost any situation, it's your anti-air, right? You've got Marines, you have the boys with the guns, and Oracles don't kill them as fast, even without combat shields, as they used to in the old days. So you're really counting on overwhelming the Terran player, and I'm assuming that his hope is that Gabe will be building 2 Marauders at a time, so his Marine count will be limited, and it'll be like maybe 8 or 9 Marines against 5 Oracles, and there I can see maybe something happens. But I just, what's the end game here? You're gonna kill a Terran with Phoenix?
No, I think the end game is that this is Widowmine almost connected. I love that Gabe was waiting with this, by the way. He was waiting for a long time. He's like, I'm gonna wait until your Oracles and Phoenixes show up on my side of the map. That's when I go in. I think the end game is that the Terran player doesn't know that this is happening. They make a traditional push, and all of a sudden you swarm them with Zealots, a couple Phoenixes, and then like 5 or 6 Oracles activate Pulsar Beam at once. I've seen crazy games. I've seen him make it work. So I don't want to say this is, by definition, a bad strategy or it can never work. I know it can work, but it's important that everything that leads up to that point really goes your way as a Protoss. And I feel like this game has kind of been a disaster for Hellraiser, as he's down 3 workers and Gabe knows everything that's up. And if Gabe knows what's up, I mean, he's got fantastic game sense. Gabe is not going to run to the other side of the map with like a very medium-sized army, you know, it's like 12 to 14 bio units, like, oh my goodness, you've got so much. No, Gabe right now knows all I need to do is get like a proper bio ball, you know, 60 to 80 supply of stim bio. And then your army is going to suck, my army is going to be fantastic, and we're heading into game 3.
Yeah, this is a tough situation. I do agree with you. I think if there was one way that HeRoMaRinE kind of drops the ball, it would be if he splits his army up. And that's when these Oracles and the Phoenix are going to become terrifying. And this is actually what I was talking about. It's kind of comical to see it all happening at once, but this is a good play, right? Use the extra Oracle energy, set up stasis traps. You can buy yourself a tremendous amount of time. The amount of scans alone to get through this without having your army grabbed would be enough damage. Honestly, back on the Terran, and it's like, okay, you can't leave any mules at home now if you're going to do this, but even splitting up a couple of Marines, he's going to bait 2 of them, but there's still like 3 or 4 more of these just waiting, and there's still 5.
Yeah, but now Gabe obviously knows about this already as well, and I think he was already thinking about it. That's why he sent out those individual Marines. If Hellraiser can get double Robo Bay up and running, and then you get a couple of Colossi, there is hope. We often talk about upgrades in this matchup, and his upgrades are terrible. He's got no upgrades at all. He's heading towards +1, but that means that his army is actually very weak at this point. I think these Zealots are going to melt. We've got 31 Marines, and we even have 3 Ghosts on the way. If I was Gabe, I would wait like a tiny bit longer, a few more, but I actually think that his army is still very powerful that HeRoMaRinE is working with.
He got very close, one of those stasis traps, and he scans ahead, so was able to kill that one. And I think you said it perfectly, though, Kev, is he's with the Ghosts. EMP is going to be massive, not only against the Phoenix and the Oracles, because obviously they have energy, but those Zealots and the Sentries clump up really hard. There's a lot of Widow Mines here. EMPs combined with those will rip them to pieces, and there we see Widow Mines doing what they do best, blowing Protoss units to hell.
And Terran units, apparently, but that doesn't...
Terran units, but there's some Terran left over, so it's okay. GG.
Yep. Yeah, very well done by Gabe. An excellent game by him. And this game obviously looked a little bit silly. If you're watching, you're like, whoa, what is Hellraiser doing? It's one of these builds. It really needs to get a good start, needs to get some momentum, needs to keep the Terran in the dark. Then it could snowball, and it could look really awesome. But Gabe is like, no, I don't want really awesome. I want a victory. And here we are, 2-0. Well done by the German. Nate, we're heading into a very quick break. After that, we'll be back with Game 3 between Hellraiser and HeRoMaRinE.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are currently sitting at a 2-0 lead for the German Terran player HeRoMaRinE as he faces off against Hellraiser in what has been somewhat lopsided Terran versus Protoss thus far, Rotterdam.
Oh, we can be honest over here, Nate. That's what we are here for. It's been incredibly one-sided. HeRoMaRinE has just done a solid job so far, but nothing very special. Just kind of feels that Hellraiser is perhaps overcomplicating things a little bit. And obviously, this man doesn't give a damn. He only cares about one thing, and that is moving into the top 8 of this season of the DreamHack SC2 Masters winter. Hailing from Germany, it is HeRoMaRinE.
And his opponent in the northeast here on Oxide, the red Protoss player representing Clash, he is Hellraiser. How about that build though, right? He opened Stargate, went for a Void Ray to deal with the Reaper bunker. Void Ray ends up not really doing anything for the rest of the game.
Nothing,
and goes into what, 5 Oracles and 10 Phoenix, which also mostly sit at home too, worth pointing out because of the mine drops with the armory opening. So they have to be forced to stay home with five oracles just to do detection until he goes and places a bunch of stasis traps. Big Gabe says, well, I can just have a Marine run all the way up and down the length of the field on either side, trigger all the stasis traps, and, you know, Bob's your uncle. But unfortunately, none of the shenanigans Hellraiser's tried has worked out. Also, in game 1, he, like, ninja'd his natural, and it got scouted very quickly, too. And he took, like, a third base before 4 minutes. So Hellraiser's kind of been... He's been very, very out there with the choices as far as strategy go for this series.
Yep. If I think back of that previous game, I wonder how that game plays out if Hellraiser doesn't send his Void Ray to the other side of the map. It's safe to say that that was a pretty useless adventure, right? It got absolutely nothing done. It got a tiny scout off, but Void Rays are slow. Phoenixes and Oracles are very fast. So I think I would have preferred to see him keep the Void Ray at home, then even send his first Oracle if he really wants to the other side of the map. And obviously that was detection, but he opened up with multiple Oracles anyway. Then I feel that he gets in much cleaner cleanup against the first Mind Drop. And then maybe he deals with the second Mind Drop a bit better as well. Because just every second that goes by there, the longer it takes to clean up the first one, the more damage you're going to take off the second one. And that's where it kind of all snowballs. And I think at that point, everything already kind of fell apart for Hellraiser. So I wish he would have kept the Void Ray at home.
Yeah, I also think it's interesting that you go for the shield battery very quickly in the natural, even though he was going to build that Void Ray anyway. Like, yeah, I understand that the reason why he might have tried to go for the Void was to avoid dealing with the SCV repairing and unloading, jumping back, Reaper grenades, and like all of a sudden you can't mine off your natural for like a minute or two if the Terran does it well. But if you're going to just say, okay, well, I'm going to build a Void Ray, and then that doesn't matter, if you also get all the other normal things to defend, like you haven't really saved yourself much trouble, right? Like you still got everything that you were going to use even if you didn't have a Stargate, so you wasn't able to gain much of an advantage from it. Reaper comes in, sees the robotics facility, and will die maybe getting a probe. No. Okay.
Yeah, worth noting though, right? The robo opening on the side of Hellraiser, I feel like that's the least common one of the 3 potential openings, and there comes world's quickest robo bay. Are we opening up with some speed prism shenanigans over here? That's kind of like the only thing I can really think of. Yeah, it must be.
Well, he may not be successful so far in this match, but I will tell you that he's been entertaining. He certainly kept me guessing. I think he's kept everybody watching and probably HeRoMaRinE guessing as well. But at the end of the day, you can do all like the fancy dancing shenanigans and whatnot, but you know the gun beats the knife in the straight up fight, no matter how well you can twirl it, Roddy.
So HeRoMaRinE is opening up with a very quick tank this game, and a Liberator as well. That gives me the feeling that Gabe wants to be a little more aggressive this game than he's been in the other games, where he kind of waited until he had a very powerful army. This time he might go for a very early move out. I actually think that some of the Speed Prism openings, if you go for high... Oh, Colossus.
It's Colossus!
Yeah, but it might not be that bad, right? Because if Gabe indeed does run to the other side of the map, the only thing that's good against Colossus... he actually goes triple CC, so Gabe is not going to move to the other side of the map. What a bizarre opening on both sides. Because now it's the Speed Prism Colossus and then still a 3 minute for a third base for Hellraiser. What the hell?
I don't get it. Bill, if there's one thing you can say about a Colossus drop opening, there's a distinct weakness in that obviously the robotics bay doesn't get to start researching extended thermal lance as soon as it finishes. You're getting the gravitic drive, so that the prism moves faster. So the Colossus doesn't have that much range to peel stuff off, but this Liberator coming over here is going to be annoying too. It's going to focus down the probes, not wasting any shots on the stalkers. And 5 is not bad considering how thin this build is out of Hellraiser. But I was going to say the poke potential of this drop isn't truly realized until you have Colossus range. Like the Colossus is still not going to have the same poke ability. Still longer range than the Marines. I think it's 7, but there's a lot of risk to this type of play. Yep.
There's a tank as well in the natural. Second tank comes out, and I actually think it's going to be very hard for this Colossi to get a whole lot of damage done. Now there are 2 siege tanks in the mix. You have to respect the Raven as well and the potential for that interference matrix. Now HeRoMaRinE knows what he's going up against, and he's like, cool, I'm going to make a Viking. That will keep that War Prism at bay. I mean, at least Hellraiser won't be like super far behind this game, and it's not that he's like, oh my goodness, he needs a miracle. I'm still not really feeling this start, because at this point they're tied up in workers. Look at what Hellraiser is working with and what he's heading towards. It's like, well, Charge Zealots are really good, until the bio ball becomes very big and has upgrades, right? And we're always gonna get that. So I kind of hope that Hellraiser takes additional gases and then just tries to play a double Robo style a little bit quicker, because I actually think he's gonna find way more success with that than the Mass Zealots. And he knows that he's going up against a triple CC opening as well. So how do you feel about that, Nate?
Yeah, I was gonna say you already pointed this out, but the worker discrepancy is way lower than it's supposed to be at this stage of the game, right? Protoss, you want to try to get that third Nexus up quickly, whatever opening that you're doing, and then kind of use Chrono Boost, get the worker count up, have the third base saturated before the Terran player, and then you can start to invest into either delaying the Terran player's third or going for an attack yourself. This Prism, I think, is still very risky and dangerous to have over here, especially if it eats any shots from those tanks. But
all right,
I like Gabe's position.
Well, I like it too, but I casted a PvT series yesterday with Gerald, and they make these crazy Zealot Archon attacks. Gerald did it with Storm. Hellraiser is going to strike right here, right now. And this is actually a beautiful moment to attack, because HeRoMaRinE doesn't have Stim yet. Tanks are not that sick against Zealots, so this attack feels a bit random, but it could be very good. He needs a couple of Zealots on the right side, though. Those tanks are so exposed. Get a couple Zealots on those tanks, Hellraiser.
Yeah, the tank in the back has actually been able to shell away quite a bit on that Prism, getting another warp in, even though it only has about 50 hit points. That may be what he needs to get the rest of the damage onto at least this third base, if not the rest of everything that HeRoMaRinE has. He's bringing in Medevac to evacuate the SCVs from the third. He's trying to kind of limit his losses. Still only down about to 13-ish workers. It's not completely done yet, but gonna drop the Zealots onto the siege tank on the high ground with the Colossus and Charge Lots, break the natural open, and now things are starting to spiral out of control for HeRoMaRinE. G, the single G comes out. And Hellraiser, okay, I was gonna say, I'm like, you know, if you're not going for this really fast attack to try and kill the Terran as they grab their third, then I think that HeRoMaRinE gets a really big advantage. But that's what you're supposed to do as the Protoss, right? Is you set the third up, you have it ready to go before the Terran, and then you make your move either defensively or offensively. I didn't think he was going to be able to just walk across the map and kill him like that, Kev, but that was wild to see.
Yeah, I think Gabe spread himself thin a little bit too early. I don't think Gabe really had to get himself in that very compromised position there. And it was really funny because this was almost a bit of an anti-timing for Hellraiser. He was getting a Templar Archives, and I think he was getting some additional upgrades on the Forge. He was even going up to 4 bases. But what I love is like that he realized right now that Terran army is not good. If I wait 20-30 seconds, that Terran army becomes like 2 or 3 times as good, because then all the barracks are up and running. That's when Stim kicks in. That's when Combat Shield kicks in. This was actually like kind of a weird timing, but it made perfect sense, because in those fights, if it's just standard Marines with no upgrades and tanks, that's where Zealots can really shine. So very well done by Hellraiser.
Yeah, definitely jumped on him at the ideal opportunity, because the only reason why we even had that conversation, is because the Terran player got the third command center really early. Like, you don't typically see Terrans have their third orbitals done on the same worker count as the Protoss at 6 minutes. In order to have that economy that we were talking about that could be a problem, you have to give up something else. You're either delaying your tech or you're delaying your infrastructure. And then I think landing the third immediately, as you said, Kev, he spread himself extremely thin, didn't have combat shields, no bunkers, hardly any medevacs.
Yeah, I think no bunkers is arguably the biggest problem there. Like, it feels kind of fishy to be like, oh, I'm gonna build 2 bunkers as a Terran player at your third. You know, you don't want to do that. You're like, I'm not a Gold League player. I'm not gonna bunker up over here. But Zealots really suck against bunkers, and some bunkers and depots are even worse. Like, if there would have been a little triangle of depots there and with a bunker behind it, that attack does not actually kill HeRoMaRinE. There's not a way. Zealots are gonna derp, they're gonna run around those depots, they're gonna try to kill the bunker, they'll never kill it, because only 1 Zealot at a time can actually attack it. But yeah, HeRoMaRinE was just kind of naked there. All of his units were very exposed, and Hellraiser saw an opportunity and he capitalized on it. Very well done.
Yeah, and gets himself on the board here as we're loaded in to Romanticide in the northwest position. We have the blue Terran player representing Mouse Sports. He is HeRoMaRinE.
And in the bottom right side, we're looking at the main base of the Ukrainian Protoss. He's trying to get his first W in competitive StarCraft 2 against HeRoMaRinE. Representing Clash, it is Hellraiser.
All right. Well, Romanticide is a nice, I like to think of this as a nice map that you can play some of the longer ones on. You have that protected high ground for your third base and your natural with only one real direct access ramp that leads to it. But perhaps a long macro base game is not what Hellraiser is thinking about today here, Kevin.
Nope. I think Hellraiser was playing the long con. He's like, I have a best of 5 and I've got it all mapped out. These are the builds I'm gonna do. He did the fake proxy target in the first game, where it's like, if he overreacts, it's awesome, and if he doesn't, it's okay. Because eventually in this best of 5, I'm gonna go for the real proxy target. And that's at least what I think is going to happen here. HeRoMaRinE does build a command center on the low ground. Actually, does not open up with a Reaper. He's going to open up with a Marine. So that Marine will go on a bit of a journey, but normally that Marine doesn't scout this target immediately. We'll see if he actually goes deep enough or not. Because I would probably turn around. If I don't see it here and I don't see it near that mineral wall. No, Gabe is going in. Gabe is going all the way in, man. He's getting some great scouting done by these single individual Marines.
And this is just really smart play. This is really heads up type of play, right? He's making sure that this isn't one of those series that snowballs out of control because he does something really greedy to try to get back at him for that last map. And knowing this is nice, but it does not completely solve the problem. It depends on if Hellraiser wants to commit more. If so, how much? This is really important. The Marine is there to get the probe as soon as it drops that pylon. This is what I was about to say, Kev, is it's so important because if you don't catch that probe and it's able to get 4 or 5 shield batteries building, it doesn't matter if you have 3 Marines, you won't be able to kill all the batteries or the pylons before they complete. And then the Void Ray with the shield battery becomes a little bit of a better unit against Terran.
Yep, I really think this is actually a disaster already for Hellraiser. Not only did this target get scouted immediately, so HeRoMaRinE has time to think about his defense. He loses the probe as well, and he's gonna lose the adept, he's gonna lose the pylon. So now it's just an individual Void Ray. The second probe is gonna have to wait until it gets batteries up. I mean, we know that Void Rays and shield batteries are capable of producing magic, but this is not the way that this cheesy build is supposed to start.
No, not at all. Immediately, that bunker being finished in the main base shuts down so much of what this can do, because even in a best case scenario, the shield batteries won't be done out here forever. So the Cyclones are going to be able to come out in slightly larger numbers. I do feel like this starport is still a little bit late because Vikings are one of the best answers to this. If the Void Ray count gets high enough with the batteries, as we can see here, they don't really have a lot of trouble killing individual bunkers. And if they're able to shoot the Cyclone, they won't have trouble killing those either. But that's what the shield battery's for, unless he gets mag field.
Those batteries are very close to the ramp. Maybe that's on purpose as well. The Cyclone does lock on one of the batteries, so Hellraiser needs to cancel this. You know what I'm most surprised by is that Hellraiser built 2 more gateways at home. So Hellraiser is incredibly committed. Most of the time you are when you open up one base proxy Void Ray. But he's going to bring this to the next level. No expanse, he just wants to bust. And I think he's very unhappy with the fact that HeRoMaRinE has decided to send his command center into the main base, right? I think if you do this kind of stuff with your Hellraiser, you hope that HeRoMaRinE tries to defend his main and his natural at the same time. We know that's not working. That's a mistake by HeRoMaRinE, though. Losing a Cyclone is bad news.
That's very, very tough. Now, the nice thing about the way that the shield battery game has been done for Gabe is that there's only so much energy that can really be used for the shield restoration. But because of those gateways that you mentioned, there's multiple Stalkers on the low ground, so it's not quite as simple as just poke and kite. With the Vikings, Stalkers can stand a little bit closer without a siege tank being done. And the first one does finally complete now. So he needs to be very careful about protecting that. It's going to be hard to move forward out of his base, but right behind the bunker is exactly where it should be.
I love that by Gabe. That is a really good spot for this tank. The Phoenix does live the Cyclone, but the Cyclone lives. The Phoenix dies, and things go from bad to worse. He already tried to catch the Cyclone once. He even flew over the bunker, but HeRoMaRinE with some fantastic micro on his second Cyclone. The first one died kind of in a clumsy way. The second one, that was game-winning micro right there.
Oh yeah, no, that was incredibly well done. And comes forward with the tank, brings everything else forward to help it out. And despite all of that, we talked about it, there's just he wasn't really able to get the big core of batteries set up, and he's building them further and further away from the base, which is going to make it harder and harder to poke without being bursted down by these Marines, by the Vikings. And well, I guess we can't say we're surprised by this, Kevin, but the Dark Shrine is on the way.
When behind, go Dark Shrine, right? Isn't that something that people have been saying since
I feel like
2010?
I've heard it. I've heard that somewhere before. I can't quite put my
Who
finger on it.
was that? Jeez. All right, HeRoMaRiNE's feeling confident enough right now to go down the low ground. He's going to clean all of this up. Hellraiser was getting up another battery there. If you guys wonder why would he do that, I think that's because he's faking it right now. He's like, no, I'm still trying, HeRoMaRiNE. We obviously have a production tab, and we know that he's not trying. He is expanding. He is going to try to get Zealot charge up and a Dark Shrine. Needless to say, this is a very bad position for Hellraiser to be in. But he's not giving up yet. Look at Gabe, though. Gabe is like, yeah, missile turret.
Immediately.
I don't believe any of this.
Immediately. Yeah, no, that was you took the words out of my mouth, Kev. Gabe is like, yeah, how many ways could I lose right now?
Yes.
Probably one. There's probably one thing that could kill me. I still think moving out of his base is still going to be a little bit tricky, but as long as he saves the scanner too, then it shouldn't be too bad.
Yep, and he's even bringing SUVs as well. So not only can he repair, but he can also build a missile turret. I do agree with you that I don't think this move out is necessary. I'm not saying that I hate it because his army is big, it's powerful, and I don't really know how Hellraiser is going to defend this. But now there is one Dark Templar. The Dark Templar should really start attacking these units already. It doesn't feel necessary to me, but as long as Gabe doesn't take any damage at home, I think he's going to be okay one way or the other.
Yeah, I think actually the most important thing is what you were saying before is just needs to get a missile turret with this push if he can try to hold on to this. But those Zealots actually do get up on top of the Marines. He wants to try and clear those out so the Void Rays can mop everything else up. But, well, we've already talked about this. This army has a massive amount of firepower. Missile turret finishes just in time. Although, I guess it's going to burn down, so he's going to have to rebuild one on the army. Don't know if he has another scan. There it is. So that should be enough time to finish this turret. And that one's close enough to the natural to kill it. And from that point, if you kill the natural, I don't see any path to victory here for Hellraiser. The Void Ray is going to come out with 3 Zealots. Doesn't need to lift the Vikings. And there it is. GG. HeRoMaRiNE takes